The iPhone Air seems really hard for some people to understand. Maybe it's because it's priced between the iPhone 17 and 17 Pro, but is missing features from both. Maybe it's because to you, your phone is just a tool, and why would you pay more money than a 17 to get less features? Or maybe you just don't see any value in something being thin and light. There are a lot of reasons for someone, especially tech nerds, to not like the iPhone Air. But what's really great is that this year, for the first time that I can remember, Apple's actually giving us a range of options for different users in the iPhone line. If you care more about battery life than anything, the 17 Pro is sitting right there for you. So I wanted to present the perspective of someone who is downgrading from a 15 Pro to the beautiful new iPhone Air, and talk a little bit about why and how I'm able to do that, and hopefully just present a different perspective than what you're going to see in most tech review videos, because it turns out maybe we don't all care about the same things. But before we get to that, I want to do a quick mini review of the iPhone Air. Like pretty much every other reviewer whose video I've watched about the Air, I definitely had a moment of wow picking up the iPhone Air for the first time. The thinness really is incredibly striking. It is one of those things you really do have to hold and feel for yourself to appreciate it. Now, my biggest negative about the iPhone Air isn't the battery or the speaker or the single camera, it's actually the screen size. As a pretty heavy iPad user, I don't need my phone to be the same size as a tablet, so past a certain point, bigger screens are kind of a negative for me. Really, the iPhone X at 5.8 inches was probably the sweet spot of where I want my phone screen to be. But the positive side about the bigger screen is that it's wider, which actually makes typing feel really comfortable. It feels a lot like typing in Portrait on an iPad mini or the 11-inch iPad Pro, just a surprisingly good typing experience. The thickness of the camera plateau and the camera itself upset some people, but it's really been a non-issue for me because, like I'm sure you've heard by this point, because the phone is so big, at least for me, when I pick it up, my hand really doesn't go anywhere near that part. So I almost never encounter it. The iPhone Air is definitely a two-handed device, but it's not impossible to use one-handed. And about half the time I use it, I do use it one-handed. And scrolling just with one hand on a device this thin in your hand feels incredible. Now, I'm only going to talk about battery life in this video in more of an abstract, and I'll get into why that is, but it's fine. Again, I'm coming from a 15 Pro, and if I'm not mistaken, if you're upgrading from anything but, I think it's the iPhone 16 Plus or the iPhone 16 Pro Max, the Air, by Apple's metrics, gets better battery life than the phone you are probably upgrading from. I've seen a lot of consternation about how you're compromising on battery life, but for me, I'm getting an upgrade. The few pictures I've taken with the camera have been fine. I'm not a photographer in any way, shape, or form, so my only judgment is how it looks to my eye. It's fine. The camera's fine. A lot of people have complained about there only being one speaker, but for watching a quick YouTube video, again, it's been fine. Is it noticeable coming from a Pro? Absolutely, but I didn't feel offended by the sound that's coming out of this phone. The only other real negative I can present is that when you are pushing the phone a little bit, the area around the camera plateau, generally around the right side, can get pretty warm. It's never uncomfortable to me, but it's definitely warm and something to note. But to be honest, compared to my 15 Pro, it's basically like holding an ice pack. Now, as much as we don't want to admit it, the iPhone, and really smartphones in general, are pretty mature products at this point. That means the differences between phones year over year, and the differences between different phones in the line are getting smaller and smaller. And that is especially true this year. Every time I upgrade my phone, I consider if I can finally drop the Pro line and buy a regular iPhone. I'm not really a heavy smartphone user anymore, and I know I've been wasting money buying Pro phones and not taking advantage of most of the Pro features. The problem is, I'm still enough of a nerd that even as a light iPhone user, I still want my phone to be nice. There have been two features that have been stuck on the Pro phones that have kept me from jumping to the regular iPhones, and that's ProMotion and Always On Display. With ProMotion and an Always On Display available across most of the line, the Pro line for me becomes significantly less enticing. Now, I'm not going to pretend that the Pro phones don't have other benefits. They have more and better cameras, they have faster USB ports, they have more or better speakers, and they offer higher sustained performance. But when your usage of the phone is basically things like CarPlay, Car Key, Home Key, podcasts, and music, none of those things matter. In fact, I'd wager, except for the cameras, most normal people don't care about any of those things. So when buying a phone, or really any device, people have different sets of priorities, and those priorities affect how the downsides of a device impact them. Let me look at each one of the negatives that have been presented about the iPhone Air. From even when the iPhone Air was just a rumor, people have been concerned about battery life. And I get it. A lot of people live on their phones, and that means that battery life is a huge priority to them. And that is completely understandable. So it's probably hard to imagine that someone could not really care that much about battery life. But folks, I'm here to tell you that is 100% true. For me, I'm, I guess, lucky enough to have a desk job. I work as a programmer where I work hybrid. So I spend a couple days at home and a couple days in the office. Both places have access to power. So if I need to plug something in, I just plug it in. I don't give it really any more thought than that. But then again, I charge everything overnight except for my Apple Watch, which I use for sleep tracking. To me, plugging in your phone or whatever, whenever you need to, isn't a big deal. I don't stress about battery life or battery health. Life is just too short. In fact, and the main reason I mentioned up front I'm not going to say much about battery life is because when I am at home, my phone often doesn't come off the charger. Between my iPad and my Apple Watch, I don't really need my phone for anything. So in terms of having one speaker, I used to watch a lot of video on my phone, but over the years, that task has transitioned mostly to the iPad Pro with its 4 speakers, or to the Vision Pro. So this is essentially a non-issue for me, although really the speaker's fine, guys. It's not gonna knock your socks off, but it's completely fine. Using AirPods or something equivalent to that, in my mind, makes the one speaker thing just not even remotely an issue. The camera may be the biggest actual hurdle for a lot of people, including me. And it's only a problem for me because I have this channel and I use my phone for recording myself. I do a lot of cinematic mode, and of course the Air doesn't support that. So what do? I have a couple options. I can just keep using my 15 Pro like I'm doing now, or I can buy a real camera, which at some point I probably should just do anyway. I have options, but I completely understand if you don't want to do those things. Like the one camera thing is a real concern that you have to deal with if you're considering the Air. But for me, there are workarounds. And then as far as the USB port, so here's the thing about the USB port. My only use for faster data transfers on a phone is getting footage off of my phone and onto my iPad so I can edit it. It turns out when you do a lot of cinematic mode and you go to move those videos, the phone has to process that cinematic effect before it lets you share it out. And that takes time and it gets your phone really hot. I usually just kind of plug it in and let it go for, 10 or 15 minutes. By the time it's done, the transfer over a wire isn't really that much faster than using AirDrop. So that's been a non-issue for me too. Oh, and one other point on the camera. The equation would be 100% different if I had kids, which I don't. My only use for the camera really outside of these videos is taking pictures of 2 wonderful but slightly mischievous dogs. And I feel like the Air is doing just fine with that. So the thing that really makes the iPhone Air work for me as a phone is that I am admittedly a pretty big Apple super nerd. I wouldn't have this channel if I wasn't. And my favorite Apple product isn't the iPhone or even an iPad, it's really the Apple ecosystem itself. It's that set of technologies that makes it really easy and seamless to move your work between different devices and give each device the tasks that it's best for. And what that really means is my phone doesn't have to be my end-all be-all device. I don't have to do everything on my phone. Truth be told, my phone during the day most of the time is the 11-inch iPad Pro, but it handles the majority of all the things I would use my phone for back in the day, while also having the side benefit of being pretty good for taking notes during meetings. Apple's continuity features are really top tier and really do make it as seamless as possible to move between different Apple devices. For example, the iPad can float between being a companion device and being a laptop replacement when it needs to be. The Apple Watch comes in for fitness activities or listening to podcasts while walking the dog. The Mac, could do some of this stuff too. I'm sorry, I don't ever talk about the Mac. I just find it boring. But you get the idea. And I'm not saying go out and buy a bunch of extra Apple gear so the iPhone Air works for you. Not saying that at all. My point is, if you have these devices, and I'm thinking especially like the iPad, a lot of people have iPads sitting in drawers, consider putting these devices to work. So what's left for the iPhone in this scenario? Well, again, for me, it's things like CarPlay and CarKey and HomeKey. The iPhone's still probably the best iPod, although iPad's a pretty good iPod as well. The iPhone's best for GPS navigation, Obviously, the iPhone is the camera for a lot of people. And at the end of the day, my iPhone becomes important in between places. Once I've gotten to where I'm going, usually the iPad's the better tool for me, but in the in-between or being outdoors, that's where the iPhone really shines. I find overall I have a better experience with my tech by spreading the work around versus making my phone do literally everything. So to close this out, I think the iPhone Air is an amazing iPhone. And it's been kind of annoying to me to read and watch all these reviews that present it as full of compromises. It's not full of compromises. In my mind, it has a compromise, and it's the camera, and that can be worked around if you want. But if you don't want, or you want the most battery life possible, the iPhone Pro is sitting right there for you. You have that option. You don't have to buy this phone. But in my mind, this iPhone, the iPhone Air, does all the things most people use their phone for, web browsing, social media, and all that stuff. And it does it in the best iPhone form factor that Apple has shipped in years. In their marketing, Apple has said that this is a taste of the future. And I hope this line continues for people like me who really do prioritize their portable devices being thin and light. The closest thing I have to a hot take is that if they continue to make the Air, I would be willing to sacrifice battery life to get a phone even thinner than this. I'd be willing to sacrifice the USB port to get a phone even thinner than this. But that is just for me. You may see things differently. That's gonna do it for this one. As always, if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel on your way out, that would help me and the channel out a bunch. And with that, I will catch you in the next one. Take care.